Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, along with CBS Sports draft analyst Chris Trapasso, and we have a very special show for you today in which we each watched one full game of JJ McCarthy for you and Drake Maye for me, with fresh eyes on these prospects to make new observations about these quarterbacks that we have talked about so much. So we're going to take you through some of the highlights and things we observed in these games. So we can just dive right in here, Chris. Tell me about which game you selected of JJ McCarthy and why you kind of picked that game to see the best side of him as a prospect.
I went with the layup. I picked the Michigan game against UNLV. And in that game, JJ McCarthy, 22 of 25 for 278, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. So only 3 incompletions the whole game. And I get it that UNLV is not like, facing even Washington in the national title, or obviously Alabama in the Rose Bowl. But I wanted to go with the game that I remembered early. I think it was their first or second game of the season that was just littered with awesome throws from JJ McCarthy. And it's good to kind of do this to get closer to the draft. So I kind of do get a refresher when I'm going to be writing and talking about these prospects, even the quarterbacks, for a long time over the next month and into May. I went in and immediately, in the first quarter, the 2 biggest takeaways, and then it was kind of littered throughout the game. I was reminded of the blend of anticipation and arm talent that JJ McCarthy has, that I think the naysayers will kind of point out, oh, well, he doesn't really have that great of an arm. And we talked about it in last episode. It doesn't really stand out. Now, it doesn't stand out among this class because you even have Joe Milton in this class. Caleb Williams has a pretty big arm. Drake Maye has a big arm. Michael Penix. But I think because we had been talking about that for so long, I was thinking, yeah, his arm really wasn't that great. But of course, I had him as a first-round grade. Going back right away, there are some throws. There is a deep comeback from the far hash off play action, a throw that if J.J. McCarthy is drafted by the Vikings, he will make to Justin Jefferson next season, where the throw is before Roman Wilson makes his break, but it is a long, long throw from the 50-yard line down to the 25. And that is a throw, shows the ball play action, has to step up in the pocket, and then he fires a rocket to Roman Wilson. Perfect ball placement. There's a few other throws that I can get to later, but just throughout the game, and there was 4 or 5 that I was like, man, he really trusts his arm talent, and he has a pretty big arm, and can also throw with anticipation. So you get that combination together, you're going to connect on some of those tight window throws.
So as we've been talking about McCarthy, I think a lot of times what we've gone back to is maybe not the same ceiling as some of these other quarterbacks. And as you watched it, as you mentioned, it was against UNLV, so it wasn't against Alabama. And the last thing that is in my mind is watching his final 3 games, which I thought had small flashes, but not a consistency throughout them of great plays. And I guess that's what's kind of kept me from talking about him as a potential superstar is does he have this one thing that's his next level superpower that he is going to beat you with when things go wrong, right? Which we'll get into when I watch Drake Maye. There's a lot of that with Drake Maye. And I think there's less of it with McCarthy, but should we be giving him more credit because of the velo he could put on the ball for NFL type of throws? That is kind of his superpower, is the fact that if you need a deep out, which is a really difficult throw to make on time in the NFL, that he is going to be able to put the velocity behind it to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think so. And I've heard Greg Cosell, who I talked to a bunch of the combine. I was super grateful to kind of be able to sit down and just talk to him in the media room there, and I respect a lot, make a point that I think is a good one, that yes, JJ McCarthy has a strong arm, but it's really only when he has a clean pocket. And I slightly disagree with that, because I do think he can generate the velocity off structure too. But for me, and we've talked about this, yes, a quarterback's going to be pressured around 30% of the time, and behind a bad offensive line, maybe 40%. But if we're looking at it just through a Vikings lens, it'll probably be on the lower side of that range. So 70% of the time, he's going to be protected well if we're kind of envisioning this scenario of JJ McCarthy in Minnesota. And so that's the scenario that I want to see that high level of velocity. And I certainly saw that. I was refreshed, reminded of that in this game. There's also a throw that he made, very classic Madden smash corner. The outside wide receiver runs a very quick comeback route. The slot receiver runs a corner. So they're really trying to bait that outside cornerback to either take that short comeback on the perimeter or sink with the deep corner. You kind of pick and choose. Right away, McCarthy notices that the outside corner is staying flat, like in the flat with the comeback. But the corner actually, I don't know who this UNLV corner was, does a great job sinking. And he like almost knows that concept is coming. And the accuracy, the assertiveness, and just the velocity, like you're mentioning, that McCarthy showed on that throw, and that's, again, the combination of those things, it ended up being between like three cornerbacks, and that underneath corner almost gets there. Had the throw been, I don't know, 5 miles per hour slower, it might have gotten tipped, picked off, and he kind of just, it was right in rhythm, made the throw, and really didn't think anything of it. So if you're looking for the Caleb Williams type stuff from JJ McCarthy, even though we've kind of talked, he can improvise, you're not going to see him drifting toward the sideline and flicking it 50 yards downfield, but clean pocket, smash corner with Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, you're going to get those, I think, franchise caliber traits from JJ McCarthy when everything around him is kind of kept clean.
Yeah, so in a game like this where he's almost flawless, and what did you say, 22 for 25 is really spectacular. I mean, in a game like this, what did you feel like was working for him that in his worst games didn't? And we're going to look at some of those as we go along in this pre-draft process, is taking back a look at some of the ones where it didn't go perfectly for JJ McCarthy and Drake Maye, which I think we're going to see a lot of messy stuff there. But that's my thing with McCarthy is I think that the consistency of those fastballs ending up in the strike zone, if you will, with the metaphor, is not what I would like it to be right now. And trying to figure out, so how do you get more UNLV games and fewer Maryland games out of him where it seems like he just doesn't have that, I don't know if it's technical or if it's something footwork wise or whatever it is, but even in the games in the college football playoff, if he played like that with a lesser team and was as inconsistent with throwing the ball in some of those situations, they probably don't end up winning. And so that's kind of my concern, is like how much of this can be worked out. And even I was looking at one of the throws that I was sneaking and looking at your homework on JJ McCarthy, where he throws with unbelievable anticipation and velocity right through the trees like an arrow. But I also thought that ball is so low. Like, would it get knocked down in the NFL? Like, does the linebacker close on that in the NFL? A lot of his best throws are kind of these low trajectory rockets through people that I wonder, like, are you going to be able to get away with that at the NFL level?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, and there's probably stats that I could look up, and maybe next episode could kind of bring forth that would maybe either prove this or disprove this. But in watching the entirety of his season, it felt kind of like when he would get into a rhythmic start early in the game, his confidence would build and you would start to see more assertiveness. And that doesn't just mean get it out to the first read. It would be, all right, first read's not there. And there is a play that I watched where he looks left and then comes back to the middle, has pressure, and then kind of does like a Patrick Mahomes, like throws it off one leg like a shortstop and throws it over the middle, gets his head back to a tight end that's waiting, but doesn't lead him into one defender, but doesn't throw behind him so he gets hit by the other defender. It's a perfect throw, technically off structure, even though he's inside the pocket. And it felt like later in the season against Alabama, even at times against Washington in the national title, that he didn't get off to such a great start. And against UNLV, he did. And I think that allows him to just, it kind of sounds cheesy, but to play faster, just to process quicker and say, all right, here's where I'm going to go. I know that I need to go here. When he doesn't get off to that great start. And like, if you remember in the Rose Bowl, there was like an interception early on that they like had to review forever at the start of the second half. Like things like that, I think hurt his confidence, and he's kind of second guesses those reads, or, hey, do I pull the trigger here on this first read? Could this guy really be that wide open? Or is there like a defender lurking that I'm not seeing? It kind of feels like that's what happens. But in this game, against UNLV, you certainly, yes, want to get more of the UNLV games if you draft him. He just came right out and was assertive throughout the game, and there weren't those misses because I really think he was locked in because he felt good early on.
I was thinking about this with McCarthy in sort of a, how he play talk me into sometimes. But if you're talking me into McCarthy, one of the things you could say is that he was probably asked to game manage, that was the goal of the coaching staff. Now, of course, you could say chicken and egg there. Like, why were they asking him to game manage if he's this great prospect? But probably because they were winning games in this way.
Yeah.
If you're making that argument, I still am not fully buying into that argument, but if you're asking someone to play in a very safe style, as maybe Jim Harbaugh and Michigan was, because they knew they were dominating on defense and in the running game, then I think you're less apt to do things like you're describing. You're less apt to kind of drop down and throw a sidearm ball. I mean, I have seen him do some extremely high-level athletic things. It's not as natural as it is for Caleb Williams to just go running, or Drake Maye, as works out sometimes great and sometimes terrible for Drake Maye. It's not as natural for him to just be like, I'm balling out. It's McCarthy time. It seems more stiff for him, more rigid. Yeah. And that may have been by design. And I don't know, like at the NFL level, if you can be stiff and rigid, that makes me think of Alex Smith at a lot of times where he's got all the tools to make it happen. But there was I guess this is where I'm supposed to run, rather than, hey, just run and make a play. You're that good of an athlete. And so trying to figure out, is that just how he was supposed to be playing, or is that how he actually plays? I think is one of the biggest challenges with McCarthy in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to play devil's advocate here, or if I want to play devil's advocate here, in his final season at Oregon, Justin Herbert managed the game. And I remember going on a bunch of radio spots, and it was, why did this 6'5", 240-pound quarterback with a rocket, why are they handing the ball off 45 times? So for as much as I do think your concern with that is legitimate, and we can't just say, oh, hey, like they were winning, there is a recent example of someone with really good traits that the team they had a offensive line-minded head coach, and they're like, we're going to run the ball. And Jim Harbaugh is probably the most run happiest offensive-minded coach in the league, or obviously last year in the country. So it's kind of a different scenario with JJ McCarthy than most, where it would, of course, if you have a potential top 10 pick at quarterback, every other team would be throwing the ball all over the yard. And, that certainly was the case in North Carolina, USC, Washington. But yes, it is a little bit more rigid. And I do see some Alex Smith comparisons athletically, but from this game, to kind of go back full circle here, I was remembered, and it was highlighting in this game that how aggressive he is. There is a throw on an RPO slant that he's probably going to make next year with the Vikings, where he throws the ball like through the ear hole of the linebacker who has his back turned. And like the still that we're going to show, if you're watching on YouTube, it literally looks like he's throwing it directly to the linebacker, but it's actually like a yard past him. Like he doesn't care. There's a throw against Ohio State where I'm not quite sure if he just didn't see the underneath defender, or he just was like, I'm going to make this throw, where there's an underneath linebacker that comes screaming underneath this seam route for a touchdown against Ohio State. Big game, NFL competition. And it is like, yep, I'm going to make this throw, pinpoint accuracy, velocity, anticipation. It's all there. I was reminded of that because I thought that was very highlighted in this game against UNLV.
So that's the hard thing about McCarthy, is that in his numbers, he has a higher turnover worthy play rate than you would actually really like for somebody like him, for when we're talking about, hey, was he asked to just try to game manage, but he would fire it into more tight windows than I would have expected. And there are plays that there are plays that should have been intercepted. And what I keep coming back to trying to figure out, because this play, I looked at what you're talking about, and it's like, was this the right thing to do or not? I mean, that's what I thought too. There are a lot of these where he gets it through the tight window, and I'm not making this comparison, but I had this thought when I was watching Justin Fields years ago, where he would make an unbelievable tight window throw. And of course, it's one where you share on Twitter and everybody freaks out, but you're like, was he supposed to throw it there, or did it just end up kind of like ending up in the guy's hands because it squeaked through? And there are those in every quarterback where you just have to throw it, and maybe a guy like Eli Manning style catches it on the side of his helmet, and you got to get lucky sometimes. But if that's something that he is not identifying fast enough and just trying to whip it toward his first read or something, that's concerning because those balls can get intercepted in the NFL, where in college, they're not going to close those windows. Before we get to Drake Maye, any other observations, thoughts from watching back JJ McCarthy's best game last year?
Well, it's a perfect segue from what you just said, because in evaluating quarterbacks and having, again, I hate to have any bias, but I definitely have one because of Josh Allen. I always talk about, being aggressive and big time throw rate. What you were mentioning about, you were not surprised, but I guess you were surprised in that you went in thinking he's a game manager. You see that he's not throwing 50 times a game, and you see a lot of those aggressive throws. That's like my overall takeaway. And again, this was probably his best game of the season. And we were looking for those positives that I was like, man, this guy's a game manager, and he only threw it 25 times. They blew him out. But there were a lot of throws where I was like, man, that was an incredible throw, and that was aggressive. He probably didn't even need to make that throw. He had Blake Corum in the flat. I like, for a game manager, so to speak, that you don't have to ask him to be aggressive in the NFL. That being in Buffalo, I watched Trent Edwards and terrible quarterbacks. You watched them too, that never were quite aggressive enough. EJ Manuel is another one that technically had the traits, but was just always so timid. So for JJ McCarthy, if he's coming in saying, hey, I see Justin Jefferson deep on that post corner, I'm going to try to make that throw. Maybe Kevin O'Connell says, actually, there's a safety over there. We have designed this play for Jordan Addison to come open on the dig route underneath. Look to that second read. I'd rather it be that than check down into the flat. Like, I didn't get that in this game, where certainly JJ McCarthy could have said, yeah, I'll just check it down all game. We'll run for 250 yards and win. I was reminded that even though he has that game manager label, I like that he's on the aggressive side of that label.
In hockey, they used to say that it was easier to tell someone whoa than go. So like, whoa, dial it back a little bit rather than go, and don't check the ball down. I mean, that's where the comparison probably fails with Alex Smith, or at least from the college tape. Knowing what he's going to be like in the NFL is a different monster, but from the college performance from McCarthy, Alex Smith was always so famous for throwing it underneath the sticks, so much so that Football Outsiders named a stat after it, throwing short of the sticks. And look, we know all about this 4th and 8 check down, right? Rather than letting it rip to Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen, it's a check down to TJ Hawkinson that haunts the Minnesota Vikings in that 2022 playoff game. And I don't think McCarthy, at least from the way he's played so far, that's really the issue with him, that he's afraid to be aggressive. I just think it's a question of, is his aggressiveness too much at times? Is it just firing it to a spot and praying that it gets there? And then when it does, it's amazing. But when it doesn't, it's a turnover worthy play. And then, doing it consistently, hitting slants and stuff like that on a mark consistently, comeback routes consistently, has been something that he just hasn't really done. But I think that right there is, you can hone that more than trying to say, no, you have to throw the ball. And I think that's what it probably drove Kevin O'Connell. He'll never say this, but it probably drove Kevin O'Connell a little crazy with Kirk Cousins, getting him to actually make all those throws that he wanted him to make that were aggressive. Yeah.
One final thing that I'll say about JJ McCarthy is that everything that you just pointed out there at the end, that there are some times where you're like, okay, good throw. I want to see him kind of in an offense that's not so run heavy. But I feel like he could be, and I don't want to directly compare him to Justin Herbert, but I love Justin Herbert coming out. And I remember having to go back like the previous season, which I usually don't do. And I was like, oh, there's Justin Herbert in an offense that's not like 95 Bill Walsh college football. And I feel the same, that JJ McCarthy could go from game manager to, like, I don't want to say unleash, but that's probably the best word to describe him, where it's like, oh yeah, he can throw it 40 times a game. Like, he can spread the ball around, and it can be shotgun 5 wide receiver set or whatever, where we just didn't get to see that. And I mean, of course, you could probably dig in if you could talk to people in the Michigan program and say, was this really because you didn't trust him? And there were some thoughts about that in the national title game, but he did make those big throws late in the game, the throw over the middle to the tight end where they needed it late on a third down. So I just feel like in watching him, I won't be surprised, especially if he lands in Minnesota, if like we almost see like a different JJ McCarthy, because he just was in such a elementary offense that it just didn't give him the chance to have more opportunities to make those bigger throws down the field.
All right, on to Drake Maye we go. And I watched Drake Maye versus Duke because why not? I mean, that game, that was one of my favorite college football games all year long with him versus Duke because it just went back and forth. It was crazy. Went to overtime. Final score is something like 46-39. Something nuts is the final score. I forget what it was, but it was crazy. And this game starts out with Drake Maye immediately dropping an absolute sexy dime down the sideline. There is no other way to put it.
Yeah.
It was flawless. And he does this probably 5 times in the game. Not every one of them was caught, where he just takes a step back and just lets it go down the sideline and just guides it over the cornerback to Tez Walker. Sometimes hits him, sometimes it's broken up, but on time, exactly where it's supposed to be. None of these were like wild or all over the place. And the thing about Drake Maye that stands out to me is how little it takes for him as far as effort wise to cruise the ball 40 yards down the field to a guy running down the sideline. Like this is the reason right here. This is the reason we're talking about this is first drive right away, steps back, one step, lets it go. And it looks like he's throwing a little check down and the ball goes 30 yards down the field. I mean, it's really remarkable how easy the ball comes off his hand.
Yeah. And that is definitely one thing that with arm talent, arm strength, it's like, this seems like overly simplified, but I like to just watch the quarterback's body language and like how much torque, how much effort it seems to look like when they're throwing the football 30, 40, 50 yards down the field. And you're right that Drake Maye, and this is going back to his pro day, listening to the commentators on NFL Network. I think it was actually Bucky Brooks who went to North Carolina. He mentioned that he's like, he, more than any of the other quarterbacks in this class, checks the traditional boxes, size, and just pure natural arm talent. And that is, I know exactly which throw you're talking about. It was literally a bucket throw directly into the bucket. And it looked like it was like he was just kind of like throwing the ball just over the offensive line. And you see that with, I think, other quarterbacks. We've mentioned Jalen Hurts and the comparison to Bo Nix. When he lets it go, it's like the shoulders really into it, the legs, the hips need to rotate. And with Drake Maye, I mean, he could certainly do that when he really wants to crank up the velocity or throw it 55 or 60 yards. But the 30 to 40 yard bucket throw, either over the middle or down the sideline, he made about 50 of those in college that are pinpoint and little to no effort. You want that out of your quarterback today.
So sticking with early in the game for my notes here, okay. There are at least 3 checkdowns that are completely inaccurate, that are like, you can't believe that a throw that easy would be missed by someone this good. And they caught them, but behind the guy, up here, just all over the place. And you're like, Drake, my guy, just short arm it. It's kind of like a 3-point shooter who can't hit a layup or something. Drake, you don't have to be shooting an off balance fadeaway. So there's that. They also had no screen game whatsoever. Every time they threw a screen in this game, it got blown up in the backfield. So we talk about Bo Nix and how much of his yardage is racked up on those screens. I'm going to guess that Drake Maye was like nothing against any good team. It was just nothing. So he was constantly in like 3rd and 14 because he threw a screen that went back 4 yards or something. In the second quarter, though, there were a couple plays where I was really amazed. One of them is he drops back and he gets pressure from his right side. So it's in his face pressure. He turns to his left, escapes that guy, and flips the hips and throws it 25 yards on a line to, I think everything went to Tez Walker in this game, but to a receiver 25 yards down the field. And there is a fluidity to this guy that I think is very rare for someone at his size. And that's why I think he's even more fluid than someone like Matt Stafford or Eli Manning, who, because of their size, can be a little bit rigid at times with their play. But I mean, it just like Gumby type of bendy flips and throws this ball. And I'm like, what the, like, how did you get this out? And the amount of times where he is in the grasp or he's being tackled and he's getting a throw out. There's a play that gets called back at the end zone. I think they had 12 men on the field. This was just a clown show at times at North Carolina. I'm like, oh, what a play. That's a touchdown. Oh, there was 12 men on the field, or what? Like, what were they doing? But he's in the grasp and he finds a way. At the end of the game, he's going to try to win the game. He starts to run. They start pulling him down. He finds a guy, throws a touchdown. This must have happened 8 to 10 times in the game where there's someone who's right on top of him or he's in the grasp and still finds a way to get the football to somebody. You just don't see that all that often.
Yeah, and with Drake Maye, I think, which, again, we'll see if it happens, but all of the talk pre-combine and then at the combine, oh, Drake Maye is going to be the one who falls. He's going to be the Will Levis of this class. Vikings could get him at 11. We'll see if that happens. What I found so strange about that is, and kind of my theory on it is, you watch Drake Maye, and if you just do like a brief overview of him, like you watch I guess like a highlight package, or you just watch one game and it's not the Duke game, you're like, wow, he's a really good pocket passer. And you think he's bigger, he's a white guy, he's probably not that athletic. And he's athletic, like really athletic. And I was talking about earlier with JJ McCarthy that if you're going to be a game manager, I still want you to have the ability to, or the want to throw those tight window passes. With Drake Maye, he's certainly not a game manager, but I kind of want you to have that ability and that desire to like make a throw with a defender, like on your hip or like as you're taking a hit. Josh Allen has that. We saw it Will Levis when he flashed last season. He's doing somersaults over guys. Like Drake Maye kind of has that. And I'm literally going to hate myself for saying this. He has that like it factor of like, I will just do whatever it takes to, again, raise this clown show to a respectable level on this play where, oh, the left tackle didn't block anyone and the running back right there didn't actually pass protect. So now that I have two defenders in my face, I'm going to like step up into the pocket, do like a jump throw 30 yards downfield while I'm taking a shot. I want those not just like crumble under the face of pressure type demeanor from your quarterback. And Drake Maye certainly has that.
This also resulted in a lot of stupidity from Drake Maye in this game. And this is his best game. So I imagine his worst games, there's more stupidity. And I've seen some of them, toward the end of the season.
He has bad,
yeah. Yep. Some serious problems with this. They are backed up to their own 1 yard line. And Drake Maye drops back, tries to hit like a deep over or something like that, and just overthrows the guy by 10 yards right into the safety's hands, as if he was targeting the Duke safety. And the broadcaster for the game is just absolutely incredulous about this. Like, what are you doing? It looked like it was clear that it was supposed to be kind of the backside of the play where it was a simple little in route that he should have hit for maybe 8 yards. And instead, he's just going for broke, throwing the ball 25 yards down the field over somebody's head for an interception. You're like, Drake, I wish you had a longer name so I could call you by your full name. Like when my wife is mad at me and says, Matthew, what are you doing? Or Christopher, what are you doing? Yeah. Like Drakeus, what are we doing here? And there are several Drakeus moments that's what I'm going to call. I will call him this if he's a Viking, is like when he does crazy stuff, because there's another one. So that's the worst moment of the game for him by far. This horrendous interception in his own zone where if there's nothing there or if you don't see it, you just can't throw that ball. There's another one where he tries to do a Josh Allen hurdle of a guy, but it doesn't exactly work. And he just gets hit in the groin and just goes down. and you just, Drakeus, what are we doing here? Why are we hurdling another human being? He's got the first down. He could just step out of bounds. And he says, no, I'm actually going to jump over a linebacker who then, of course, reaches up and hits him in the middle of his legs, and then he goes tumbling down. Luckily, he's okay. I don't think many of us would have been. But if you do that too many times, you're going to get yourself hurt. So there is so much in this game back and forth between, oh my gosh, I can't believe he pulled that off, with true NFL stuff, dodging tacklers, throwing on the move. And then there's also this sort of cover your eyes, kids. It's very ugly here with Drake Maye. Now, in this game in particular, way more great than bad. Those couple of things really stood out to me. But there were too many times where so he runs a rollout, like a little like RPO rollout to the right, kind of fakes a handoff, everybody rolls. He's got a 5-yard pass right in front of him where the guy's going to catch the ball and go for 10 to 15 yards. And he's like, nah, I don't need that. And throws it out of the back of the end zone, trying to gun it to the end zone for a guy. And they end up with a field goal instead of getting a touchdown there. And those are the things that you go, okay, are you going to do this in the NFL, or is this just you being young and trying to do everything? Sort of a similar question to like Caleb Williams.
Yeah, so everything I said about JJ McCarthy, that I want to see him in an offense that's not so run heavy when he's in the NFL, that just kind of lets him let loose a little bit. I think everything that you mentioned, and you use the term clown show for North Carolina last year, kind of feels like, and this is my obligatory mention of Bills quarterbacks of the past, kind of how Ryan Fitzpatrick used to be with some of those bad Bills teams, where like it would be 17-0 at the end of the first quarter, and then Fitzpatrick would throw like 2 picks in the third quarter. And you're like, oh, he was just kind of trying to get back in the game somehow. And that last play that you referenced, I remember that play, and it's blatant. Like, you watch it, anyone sees it. I don't know if the broadcasters say it, but it's like, duh, dude, like hit that guy in the flat. That's probably where the play's designed. It almost felt like from this game and a lot of others, even the bad game against NC State and throughout the season, he was just like, I know what I have around me or what I don't have around me. And if I'm not throwing like ridiculous touchdowns to Tez Walker on every drive, we're going to lose like 61-21. So I want to see Drake Maye in an offense that is not so reliant on him being Josh Allen or Caleb Williams on literally every drive, and they can still move the football, score points. The defense isn't going to just be a total sieve like the North Carolina defense was. So if you want that for one quarterback in JJ McCarthy, you have to want it for the other. And they're on two polar ends of the spectrum, JJ McCarthy at Michigan and Drake Maye last season at North Carolina.
And at the end of the game, it's so Drake Maye. He has, in overtime, a guy running a little in and out, wide open. If they just ran this route every play in college, that you'd never incomplete a pass because the defenders just don't know what to do. So it's like breaking inside and then just slams on the brakes, goes outside. It's an easy touchdown. The game is over. Just flip it to him, and he misses. And you're like, Drakeus. It's right there. You know how, I mean, that's like the biggest cliche is, I could have made that throw. I could have made this throw. I mean, the guy is just so wide open. You just toss the ball. And instead, he just is inaccurate on it. And that's the thing he's really going to have to change. And I guess what I think about Drake Maye is, can you fix the simple stuff, the short passes, the check downs, the wide open, whatever that you're missing? Can you rein in some of the insanity from this man and still get all of the high end? And sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. I mean, with Jameis Winston, no one was reining that in, not ever. And with Sam Darnold does the craziest stuff I've ever seen. And, you know, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's terrible. But there are other quarterbacks, and you mentioned Josh Allen. Patrick Mahomes is one of them.
Oh, yeah.
There are plenty of quarterbacks that were doing this same stuff. And it did remind me, this game did remind me, and like, warning, red lights, not saying Mahomes. When I was watching Mahomes at Texas Tech, there were like, every game was like this. It was just, oh my gosh, how did he do that? Patrick, what are you doing? What? It's like a guy shooting fadeaway 35-yard or 35-foot threes over and over and over again. And sometimes they're great and sometimes it's not. So I think that there's an element of Drake Maye that does frighten me a tad, because I've seen this player blow up before. Yep. But I also see exactly what makes him the high-end potential draft pick. And final thought, all in. They want to trade up for him. I'm not going to worry about what any draft analyst says. Sorry. I know you like him, but I mean, anyone who says, any former quarterback who's making content now to keep the vibes going, it doesn't matter to me. If they're in, I'm in. I think the high end is incredible for this guy.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. And like I said, he is neck and neck with Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams does that stuff too. My final thought beyond that, and we agree on just the final conclusion with Drake Maye. I'm glad that you mentioned Patrick Mahomes because I think now, 3 Super Bowls later, I don't want to say that people forgot the 2017 draft and that draft season, but like Patrick Mahomes was very much like the next year we got Josh Allen. He was a lot like that. And he was a lot like Drake Maye, where Andy Reid had to literally in the modern age gave him an entire redshirt year. And there was, I think I probably referenced this on this podcast, but there's an awesome profile from Jenny Vrentis. I think is when she was at Monday Morning Quarterback about like Andy Reid, Mr. like West Coast offense, coach Brett Favre in the 90s was like, all right, Pat, like what Texas Tech concepts do you want to run? What's this air raid thing that you want to do? Like he had to really at like the later stages of his coaching career, like almost like draw up a whole new playbook to do things for Patrick Mahomes that he was comfortable with and be okay with, oh my God, that was the dumbest pick I've ever seen because of how it was outweighed by the insane plays. I'm not going to say like you were that it's not to the Patrick Mahomes level and the pure talent isn't quite there, but I got those same vibes from watching Drake Maye on like a Texas Tech level team last year at North Carolina.
And there is that bendiness to him that is similar to Mahomes in that way. And both guys look like they played something else. And McCarthy
Yes.
has this element to him as well. Like, were you a basketball player? Were you a shortstop? Because you are doing things at angles that you usually see from those sports.
Yep.
So there you have it. A deep dive into the best of those two quarterbacks that should be targets for the Vikings. We'll also get into other quarterbacks as well in some of their best games. And maybe we'll touch on worst if we have time as well, leading up to the draft. What I wanted to do is a little rapid fire here, Chris, to end the show.
Sure.
Last week, we ended on your bust comparisons in which you did get roasted into the sun on the YouTube comments about using Christian Ponder. But what I wanted to do for this fun way to end the show, I want to go through some of our past successes and failures with recent quarterbacks and look ourselves in the mirror here, expose ourselves as both geniuses and total frauds when it comes to quarterbacks. So I told you 3 that you loved that you got right and 3 that you can't believe you got wrong to go through. So why don't you start out with the 3 that you got dead ass wrong?
Okay. You mentioned him last week and I was like, didn't say anything because I knew that like we were going to maybe do this. Mason Rudolph from 2018. It was my first year at CBS Sports. I was super pumped, poured over all the film I could get to. And I think you wanted me to also mention in our little pre-show notes, like what I learned, because I think it's important to kind of talk about that as opposed to just saying, hey, I got this wrong. Mason Rudolph in 2018, the 3 years of production was there, the ability to get through his reads. He kind of felt like, I don't want to say super old school quarterback, but like pre-Mahomes, pre-Josh Allen quarterback, because he was. And I thought, arm strength doesn't really matter. Look, there's Drew Brees, there's Tom Brady, there's all these, Peyton Manning at the end of his career. He didn't have a strong arm. You don't need a strong arm in the NFL. Mason Rudolph did not have that strong of an arm, had a lot of talent around him. It was this spread offense that was like basketball on turf, they called it there at Oklahoma State. And he was my quarterback 1 in that draft class. Like I'm fully exposing myself. I just thought he's going to pick apart defenses, sit in the pocket. But turns out it right coincided with Patrick Mahomes' first year as a starter where he threw 50 touchdowns, Josh Allen's rookie year, and then the next year he takes a step. And it really was like, man, you can never undersell how important athleticism is at the quarterback position, because Mason Rudolph, he was big, the stats were there, but just not a great athlete. The traits weren't there. And I think you mentioned it last week. That's why he was a 3rd-round pick, not because of what he showed in the stat book or what he was able to do with his mind, but to be a 1st-round pick, you usually, like we've mentioned, have to have those big-time traits, whether you're a receiver, an edge rusher, and now I think in today's NFL, even if you're a quarterback.
I don't think you were alone in some Mason Rudolph love. I remember seeing that going into that draft and wondering if he could be a 1st-round draft pick. And, look, he's been in the NFL. So if you can pick out a quarterback who's won some games in the NFL that's taken in the third round, I guess that's okay. But to have him as your QB1, yeah. That's
my rookie year. That was my rookie year, but it was bad.
Yep. No, that is. But I think, learning the lesson from that and always kind of wondering what's the upside going to be for a guy like that. And I think we've seen it, which is a backup quarterback. For me, my first tremendously bad miss is Zach Wilson. I watched the hell out of Zach Wilson for that year at BYU. I think that was COVID year and we weren't really going outside of our house. So I just watched Zach Wilson all the time. And I thought he was phenomenal. Even his worst game against Coastal Carolina, I remember watching that game and thinking, you know what? His team was outmanned, but he kept battling and he was trying to fire it down the field. The plays he made, the throws he made that year, the raw arm talent of Zach Wilson was, and probably still is, completely absurd. But that's not always what wins you football games, is just run around. And what I missed on that was I was just having a lot of fun watching it. But spoiler, I had been right about Patrick Mahomes. So I was like, I'm going to be right about Patrick Mahomes again and be all about Zach Wilson. And the difference between the two is size for one. Mahomes is a much bigger dude. He's like 230. The other thing is up in here between the ears. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is wildly intelligent, but also mature. He had been around pro sports his whole life. He is the most natural, gifted leader that you will ever see. Like Joe Montana, John Elway, Patrick Mahomes, most easy leadership. He doesn't even try. It's just, that's him. He just gets people to follow him. And I think the work ethic that he put in, you could have never predicted that Zach Wilson would not do that, or that would be immature or any. Maybe they knew that at BYU, but they certainly didn't know it for the Jets. So that was the Zach Wilson lesson, is just because somebody's a lot of fun and has a huge arm doesn't always mean they're going to be the next Mahomes.
Yeah, so I definitely missed on him too, and I was going to, for my next one, bundle him and Justin Fields together. They were my number 2 and number 3 overall prospects. This is when I had my scouting gradebook up and running. Position addition was a real thing. It still is. So I was like, hey, like there's some other good players in the 2021 class, but like they're quarterbacks. They're athletic. I understand that now. I've learned from Mason Rudolph. I love Lamar Jackson, which I'll get to. But I was like, hey, athleticism matters. Everything that you said about Zach Wilson, I also got like lulled to sleep with how fun he was on film, but I wanted to bundle those two together because of what I learned from them. And it's something that I feel like we haven't probably talked about enough with quarterbacks that I've learned beyond athleticism. There's lots of other things that you kind of pick up like throughout the years, like this matters, this doesn't. Zach Wilson and Justin Fields, they were not pressured enough in college. The BYU offensive line was outstanding. It was kind of like a Minnesota Vikings like bootleg action. He was just throwing the ball all over the field, making ridiculous throws. And I don't remember specifically what his pressure rate was, just how often he was pressured per dropback, but I remember it being very low. Justin Fields, same way at Ohio State, where, wow, that was a great throw. He was the number 2 recruit in the nation behind only Trevor Lawrence, but he was thrown to a bunch of awesome receivers. They just did not experience literally adversity in the pocket very often. They get to the Jets and the Bears, and suddenly it's, oh my God, I'm getting pressured 45% of the time. Like, what the hell is this? And it's happening in under 2 seconds or a second and a half. I think, to me, I had the exact same experience as you with Zach Wilson, but now I realize I actually kind of want my quarterback to, even if it's, you know, a season where he's not great against pressure like Caleb Williams last year, I just want him to have experience pressure and how to deal with, hey, this game, our offensive line is getting whooped, and I'm going to need to make some plays, either getting the ball out quicker or being better off structure. Zach Wilson, Justin Fields didn't really have to do that in their final seasons at BYU and Ohio State.
So the pressure thing is definitely real. And when you watch college football as an NFL person, it breaks my brain. And just like, throw the ball. Why aren't you throwing the ball? Why are you sitting there for so long? Right. It's always that way. And knowing how much to factor, it can be actually quite difficult. From the same draft, my 2 other biggest horrendous misses, Josh Rosen and Josh Allen. So Josh Rosen had this comeback game against, I think it was maybe Texas A&M.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes.
I
Yes.
think
That
he
was
had a
one too.
couple of them, but
There was a
one, yeah,
Tennessee one
one
too, but yeah.
they were down, I think 41-10, and they came back and won the game. Won the game in like the second half, down 41-10, and he was tough. He was accurate. He just showed everything that you would dream of from an NFL quarterback. He could go off schedule more than you thought. His there was this whole thing about how he's a tennis player and he had this smooth release. It just came out so easy. And I thought the guy was just brilliant. I don't like that, man. This is my dude. And the team wasn't that great. And he just in the pocket, he could step back, hit the back foot. The ball comes out. It was so nice. And I was like, okay, this is my guy. This is what an NFL quarterback looks like. And when I watched Josh Allen, it was a mess. We called North Carolina a clown show. This was so much worse. And I just went like, why am I supposed to like this quarterback? And I just was reminded of like I don't know, the Dan McGuire's like way back in the day, but the Paxton Lynch's, like there's just been a lot of these big arm Christian Hackenberg quarterbacks where if you bet against them, you're probably going to win. And what I did not know about Josh Allen, one was that his team had been better the year before and his numbers were fine the year before.
Yeah, they were.
And so I didn't realize that at the time that it was in there. But the other part was Josh Allen just has this drive to be great. And he has this ability to make plays that you could never expect from anyone at the highest level because he is 6'6" and 240 pounds. And it's kind of Dante Culpepper, like only if, Culpepper was more accurate, but where it's so hard for defenders to take him down or stop him from doing what he's doing. And even if there were wild moments for 3 years that he still came out, being great. But I also think too, that with Josh Allen, I also look at this as sometimes the outliers just exist. There are very few quarterbacks who need as long as him before you see like the real sign of it and the real statistical part of it come to fruition. And he just had it, like the drive and ability to improve those things that usually are fatal flaws for most quarterbacks.
Yeah. And that is, I think that's all spot on about both Joshes. And what I will say to start is everyone loved Josh Rosen. Like Josh Allen was a very polarizing prospect. Baker Mayfield became that. Lamar Jackson, certainly in that 2018 class. Everyone had like Josh Rosen either at like quarterback 2 to quarterback 4. Like he was just like the clean, like I always reference this in my head for some reason, the Tyler Eifert of that draft, where when Tyler Eifert got picked by the Bengals out of Notre Dame, it was like, he's safe. Like he's going to be good for a long time. He's maybe never an all-pro, but just really good. So you weren't alone there. I had Josh Rosen as my quarterback 3, but what I will reference about Josh Allen, because I was wrong on him too, it was before what I kind of call the Mahomes line, where I kind of feel like the floodgates were opened in the NFL to like, hey, Andy Reid type head coaches, like do some college stuff with these guys and let them throw across their body if they're going to make ridiculous plays offside of structure. Like the off structure stuff kind of opened with Mahomes, and Josh Allen was, the next year. And we saw it in 2019 with him really take that step. What I learned from Josh Allen, and I still do this today, is I remember watching him and I kind of stupidly watched the Iowa and the Oregon games like first. I was like, I want to see this guy against some real competition. And those games are literally, I don't know if a first round quarterback has ever had bad. And then Nebraska too, he throws 5 interceptions in that game. I actually went back last year and rewatched that and was like, oh, it wasn't quite as bad. But Oregon and Iowa are like horrific. And I was like, what? Why is this like Deshaun Kaiser 2.0? Like, why are they hyping this guy up? And as like Football Outsiders, which I certainly respect the hell out of them, Aaron Schatz and all that crew, they called him, a parody of an NFL draft prospect. Then I went back where the talent level was kind of similar. Like Wyoming was playing other teams in the Mountain West, where he didn't feel like that Ryan Fitzpatrick urge or that Drake Maye urge to push the envelope on every play, literally on every play to try to score a touchdown, either with his legs or his arm. And I remember after the combine writing, I think it was a pro day write-up for him, that I was like, okay, like Josh Allen needs a lot of development. I still have him as my quarterback 6 in this class, but he's not like so horrible where he shouldn't even be drafted. And like we saw him against Power 5 teams and he can't complete a pass. When things were level, which will probably be closer to in the NFL, where there's not a huge disparity between team talent, like the worst team in the league to the best team, then you saw him throw a lot of fastballs. You're like, oh, I saw it. So Josh Allen, I learned when you are dealing with even, I don't want to just say small school like FCS, but a Wyoming or even Texas Tech for the Patrick Mahomes example, when they're facing an Alabama, don't totally just destroy a guy. Be like, hey, you couldn't do it against Alabama, especially playing the quarterback spot, because a lot of times, like we're saying with Drake Maye, they have to push it, and it's not really their true identity as a quarterback.
Yeah, and that was also with Josh Allen. That was also me probably taking statistics too seriously with prospects. And it's not that you have to throw it all out, but in some ways it's so muddy that you can't just be like, and this goes to now transition to the ones we got right. It's so muddy that you can't just say, well, he completed only 50% of his passes, so he's not a prospect. And that was kind of like the Chris Redmond thing, where Redmond had a 49% completion percentage in college. So then everyone drew this line of, hey, if you're below the Redmond line, you can't be an NFL prospect. And I bought too much into this guy's statistics aren't that good, so he can't be a good NFL quarterback. And look, realistically, with most positions, and even with quarterbacks, sometimes if you bet on stats, if you bet on a guy who sacks quarterbacks in college versus somebody who doesn't, more times than not, your sack artist in college is going to work out. But every once in a while, Danielle Hunter comes along and just blows that out of the water. I think that's the same for someone like Josh Allen. On the other side of that, I never believed that Lamar Jackson's completion percentage was a problem because he had such bad wide receivers. I thought Lamar Jackson was quarterback 1 or 2, maybe at worst at that draft class. Loved him. Would have signed on for anything. And all three of my successes are all based on the same thing. It's Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Jalen Hurts. It's all the same reason. I just thought they were being over criticized and too much focus on some of the downsides of their game and forgetting the special parts of their game. Jalen Hurts is a special runner. He's not just okay, he's special. And his mentality, his character, to go from the backup thing at Alabama to thriving at Oklahoma, winning, I thought that was really special from him. Lamar Jackson, I've never seen anything like it. I have never seen anyone move like that except for Michael Vick ever, period, outside. I mean, Randall Cunningham, but like recently to ever move like that at that level of speed and bendiness and matrix stuff. And Mahomes, I thought Mahomes' offense was bad. I thought his teammates were bad. I thought his offensive line was atrocious. Everyone's giving Spencer Rattler all this credit for having a bad offensive line. Go watch Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. It's immediate pressure every time. Yeah. And the throws he made out of that, the games he kept them in when their defense was atrocious, and the guy never, ever stumbled. He never, I was kind of obsessed a little with him, so I watched a lot. And he never threw his teammates under the bus, threw his arms up, yelling at his coaches or pouting on the sideline like a certain number 1 overall draft pick did. I was amazed by how well he handled that whole thing and the throws that he made. So those are all three, and they're all three making the same bet, which went wrong with Zach Wilson, but it went right with those guys.
Yeah, so I love Jackson too. He was my quarterback 2 in that draft class, and it's kind of weird. Like, I don't know what I was thinking because I had Mason Rudolph as quarterback 1 and then Lamar at quarterback 2. But again, I've learned a lot. And because of that hit at quarterback 2, it really reinforced like athleticism matters. And what I always thought was funny, there was all the, Bill Polian, he should be a running back, whatever. It was like he didn't, and there was really silly criticism of Jackson that he didn't run a pro style offense. Well, Bobby Petrino was in the NFL before he was with Lamar Jackson. And I saw like the pocket navigation skills, throwing the ball with touch to all layers of the field. I remember writing for CBS Sports early on, like you knew what he was as a runner, but writing like, I think in October, like we need to take Lamar Jackson seriously as an NFL draft prospect. It's probably still on the internet somewhere. I want to say the game was against Purdue, but it was a team wearing black in my head where there was like first read,
Yes.
second
I remember
read,
that
third
game.
read. And I'm like, whoa. And there was a great a deep post for a touchdown where it was like, man, that was all NFL stuff. Oh, by the way, he's probably a 4-3 guy and can fake out anyone in the NFL, basically, at like any linebacker, most corners, run past every safety. So I agree with that. We're eye to eye on Jackson. A few of my other hits, it's a hit, but kind of. So Justin Herbert, you probably remember this because it wasn't that long ago, 2020. By the time the draft came, and I mentioned it earlier, a lot of people were out on Justin Herbert. It was Joe Burrow, Tua, and then oh, you could pick Justin Herbert in the 20s. He's too shy. He's not a leader. They handed it off 50 times. And because of all the lessons that I had learned about arm strength and athleticism and experience that I think was really important, I was like, whoa, guys, we're missing something here. This guy has insane, Josh Allen level arm. He's big. He's kind of the Mahomes level runner where he's not going to hurdle a guy or run through him, but he's just difficult to sack. He was a top 10 overall player for me. And I remember taking some stuff hey, this guy's more of a late first rounder as opposed to someone that will go that high. And then two others that I'm grouping together, like I did earlier with the misses, Dwayne Haskins and Daniel Jones. I had Dwayne Haskins at mid-second rounder. I had Daniel Jones even later, a third rounder. Now you could say, hey, you kind of missed on Daniel Jones because he's made some plays. But like we mentioned last episode, Daniel Jones kind of just been there. And had he not been the 6th overall pick, would the team have given him as long of a leash, as many resources? Probably not. And those two are Daniel Jones, similar to Sam Darnold. And I actually hit on him too, that too many turnovers, and not just he occasionally will miss a high throw. It's fumbles in the pocket. It's bad decisions. It's inaccurate throws. It was the holy trinity of turnovers. And with Dwayne Haskins, it was kind of the pre-Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, where there was just too many wide open receivers, too many clean pockets. I think he, in his final season at Ohio State, I think Haskins was pressured under 20% of the time. It was some astronomically low, and he wasn't a great athlete. And it was I had learned at that point by 2019, you can't have slow feet in the pocket. So certainly RIP to Dwayne Haskins. I mean no disrespect for that, but those are two that the turnovers, and you just did not have the traits again to be as highly picked as they ultimately were in that 2019 draft.
Yeah, so that's interesting that you went with guys you were right about that you didn't like, and I was thinking about that going through the list. For me, because I just went with ones that turned out that I did like. Probably Jameis Winston is the biggest one for me. That I remember so much hype on him as if he was just the next
Andrew Luck-esque, kind of.
Right, yeah. And he is so incredible with football IQ, and this guy is just through the roof. And I just remember watching, and I know a lot of the nonsense was going on with him and I call it nonsense, but some very disturbing stuff also with him in college, which I would probably be out at that point anyway, judged on the reporting and how that whole situation went down. Kind of, Deshaun Watson-esque type of stuff. And but even put that aside, that I thought did not come across to me like I would want him leading a franchise. I remember this, and it's easier to say now, but he was suspended for a game and they kept showing him on the sideline, and he was cheering on his teammates so much, and they kept going to him after every play. And it was look at Jameis. And I just thought, this is such a performative act he's doing on the sideline. He just came across as so disingenuous to me and as not any type of legitimate leader. And I also thought it was a circus with him with the turnovers. And I kept being told, don't worry that he led the nation in interceptions. What are you talking about? We were talking about all this crazy stuff Drake Maye does, and he threw a handful of picks and had a handful of fumbles. And this guy was leading the nation. You lead the nation in picks, I'm probably out one way or the other. So that was probably the one that I was most completely, I would not draft him. I'm totally out. That he did not work out, and threw 30 interceptions in the NFL. Insane. So it's never not interesting to talk about who we had right, who we had wrong, and what we can learn. So we'll go forward. We got more quarterbacks to watch their best games, which I want to do again next week. Maybe we'll have a little progress, a little news, some things trickling in, maybe a giant trade up. We'll just try to keep nudging the Vikings. All right, now that you met with these quarterbacks, it's time, and we will go from there. But always great shows with you, Chris Trapasso, and I'm looking forward to the next one, man. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Football, Chris. Say it.
Football.